fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
This week, we're talking to journalist and 404 Media co-founder Jason Koebler about the economics of independent journalism and the invisible costs that come with going it alone.
Problems don't get solved unless we solve them.
We get into what it takes to build a new media company without billionaires, what AI and broken algorithms are doing to the internet, and why fighting for reader-supported work means having a lawyer, a label printer, and a lot of faith.
I got really good at going to the post office and navigating all this stuff. I volunteered, and now it's 2 years later. I'm like, don't. Maybe it's time to get some help there.
It's a conversation about transparency, trade-offs, and how every day you're not online is money burned.
The creative economy is broken, but some people are still making it work. We're here to find out how. I'm Anna Marie Cox.
And I'm Open Mike Eagle, and this is Past Due.
Hey, Jason, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Mike, should we do rock, paper, scissors for first question?
I think you should go for it. I think you're poised.
All right.
I'm scared.
Everyone does great. Feel free to be as transparent or as opaque as possible. But our first question for every guest is, when is the last time you worried about making your monthly expenses?
Yeah, honestly, so we launched 404 Media in November 2023 and sort of I was living off of savings then. I worked at Vice for 10 years and saved a lot of money. And I would say the first 3-4 months of that, I was living totally off of savings. And I had maybe 4 months of savings saved. So basically toward the beginning of January 2024 was pretty worried about how things were going. We had launched this thing, myself and 3 colleagues had launched this thing, and we knew we needed to make money right away. We knew that we needed to have a paid subscription situation from the get-go because we didn't have tons of savings. We didn't have any VC investment or anything like that. And so I was just burning cash basically. And the first few months, people were excited about what we had launched, but there weren't that many subscribers. And so, I think the first month we paid ourselves $1,000 or something like that. And then since then we've sort of had the good fortune of, our publication has worked. And so I have not worried about it for about 1.5 years.
Well, congratulations. Because as we were talking about before we started taping, I am so worried about the future of patron-supported media that I am so happy and happy for and treasure the experiments that have worked, right? And y'all seem like such a great example. But at the same time, there's so much precarity built into your model as well.
Yeah, I guess I want to put the world's biggest asterisk up, which is the company is going really well right now. Again, I had as stable of a job exists in new media, which was at Vice, which sounds crazy to say because there was constantly layoffs and that sort of thing. It felt very precarious, but I very luckily, was stably employed for 10 years, which not that many people in journalism can say. And so I feel very lucky about that. One thing that we faced toward the end of my time at Vice was we got sued for a story that we reported, which was accurate, but we got sued for defamation by a surveillance company. And it wasn't my livelihood on the line, but we got sued for $100 million. And even though the case was thrown out, we have litigation insurance. It's called like defamation insurance. And we have a lawyer who reviews articles that we think, are legally not dubious, because we're very buttoned up in our reporting and we know defamation laws and that sort of thing, but things that could be controversial. But that's an expense that goes like above and beyond like any normal day-to-day expenses, is like the possibility of a lawsuit. It's like you're not talking about paying your own rent. You're talking about like paying an $800 an hour lawyer for potentially months at a time. And so, I mean, I think that is like a really scary part of having our own company, where it's like it's our names on the company versus working for Vice, which got sued often. And it's something that we think about a lot and something that we're prepared for. But I think that that's like on top of running a normal business, like with sort of normal day-to-day expenses and sort of like making ends meet in that way.
Aside from knowing you needed to be prepared for litigation coming from Motherboard, in starting this endeavor independently, like what are some other things you knew you had to have in place to ensure success, even though you knew you're going to be coming into it with less resources and a more sort of scrappy attitude? But what did you know had to be in place for this to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, I think 5 years ago, it would have been possible to do this. Like Defector, which is one of our colleagues, did this 5 years ago. But there was a time where you would have needed like an entire IT team. You would have needed like people who could have connected a website to like a subscription management situation, connected like all that sort of thing. And now there's many ways of just spinning something up in an afternoon, for example. And I think paradoxically, like we didn't think that we needed that much to do this. There was a lot of thought that went into it, but I consider myself like a student of like online media. Like every time a new publication launches, I like see what they're doing and I read all the articles about it and see like who's funding it and see like sort of how it goes. And I feel like there are so many publications for a while that got like a splashy story in the New York Times or Politico or wherever, and they said like our publication is coming soon. And then 6 months pass, and then they launch and they have like 3 or 4 good launch stories. And then it's like, well, what are you doing in week 2? What are you doing in week 3? What are you doing in week 4? And I think for us, we were like, every day that we are not online is money that we are just like burning. Like with that's money that we will never ever get back. And so we wanted to launch as quickly as possible. And sort of our thought was like, we want to do this as totally inexpensively as we possibly can, because we saw like one of the big reasons Vice and these publications failed was because they got really complicated and they got really big and they got really bloated, and of course they took on like tons of private equity money and debt funding and like all of that, but they also had like the world's most expensive office in Williamsburg, in Venice Beach, like in all these places. And so we're like, definitely no office, like definitely no like middle managers, definitely not like every dime that we have should like go into like the journalism, and hope that that kind of pays off in the end. And over time, we've realized like there were things that we needed that we did not have when we started. This is like, for a very long time, we were doing all of our own social media, which is pretty easy to do if you're like one person, but we're 4 people publishing, like we're trying to be on every platform. So we're like on YouTube, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, and we're trying to be there in like a way that feels natural, and like trying to juggle that while also doing articles was getting like really complicated. And so we brought on like freelancers and contractors to kind of help us with that. We also like pay an accountant, for example. Like I was trying to do the books in QuickBooks for a minute, and like it was a nightmare. It was a complete nightmare. And it's like I consider myself to be like relatively fine, like mathematically inclined, like sort of more than your average writer. And I was just like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. And so, we have like outsourced a lot of sort of the business and administrative tasks to like third party companies that specialize in this. Like we have like an old colleague of ours who sells podcast ads for us. I'm not like out there like being like, please buy ads for my podcast. And I think that's pretty common, but those are things that we didn't like realize that we needed when we started, but should have.
What about what you might call like invisible costs, which is the almost emotional factor of like starting your own business, being a small company, knowing that this is you know, kill what you eat or hunt what you eat. I can't remember what the exact phrase is, but that this is on you every day, right? Like it's a small company.
Yeah. I mean, problems don't get solved unless we solve them. And I think it's weird because I'm like I would argue I'm working a little bit less than I was in the past, just because like I was running like a very complicated and big team at a company that was like constantly having layoffs, was going through a bankruptcy. Like there was all sorts of things that like kept me up at night because there were things that I could not control in any way. Whereas like now I work very, very hard. We all work very hard, but there's not like a mystery person coming in and being like, your entire team is fired tomorrow, or like these people that you work with, like we decided to stop funding this, or these freelancers that you've been working with for years, suddenly there's no budget. It's like having that insight is like, it lets me sleep better at night for sure. But at the same time, it's like we do everything. Like, I mean, behind me, I have like a bunch of envelopes, like those green envelopes. Those are like t-shirt. Like I mail t-shirts to people because we like I have like a little hat, and it's like I got boxes of like t-shirts and envelopes and a label maker, and it's like I spent hours over the weekend like printing out and like putting these things on envelopes, and it's like that gives me. I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is DIY. It's nice. And then like this Sunday was a really nice, like unseasonably nice weather day, but I was like really far behind on all that, and I was like, I don't want to be sticking like labels on envelopes all day, you know? And so there's like a lot of stuff like that where it's like, oh, this is cool, but like no one's going to mail that stuff if I'm not, you know?
Yeah, the fulfillment person in me sees the fulfillment person in you. Yeah,
thank you so much. I grew up and I was like selling stuff on eBay when I was a kid. So I was like, oh, I got really good at like going to the post office and like navigating all this stuff. So it's like, oh, I can do it. And like, I was like, I volunteered, and now it's like 2 years later. I'm like, maybe it's time to get some help there. Not that we're selling like that many t-shirts, but at first I was like, oh yes, it's like a very personal touch. And then you mail something and it like gets lost in the mail, or it's the wrong size or something. And I'm like, oh, I'm like an Amazon fulfillment center and like the returns processor, you know?
Lots of tracking info.
That personal touch piece is interesting to me because I think that is one of the costs of starting your own independent whatever, whether it's a newsletter or a cooperatively run place, which there can be returns on that as a person, right? It's a really direct relationship. There's an intimacy to it, but there's also sometimes that costs something, right? Like you're either a nice day or just this feeling of heaviness. And I see it not just in my own work where I feel like I don't have to fulfill stuff physically, let's say, but I do have to like work on that parasocial part. But I ordered some American made filtering earplugs the other day, which were expensive, more expensive than they need to be, you know, technically, I suppose. Got great reviews, etc. I opened the package. There's like candy and a handwritten note.
Oh wow!
Oh my god, that's cute. That's above and beyond,
cute and a little bit sad to like, not sad, but also like, oh wow, like. And I also was talking to a friend of mine who said that Etsy makers tend to do this more these days. Like you don't just get the thing you ordered; you have to like people really have to like perform this like gratitude, which, on the one hand, yay, right? Like we love personal connections. On the other hand, that's a cost, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like my job, your job, our jobs have been public for a long time, no matter sort of where we've been working. Like at Vice, it was a public facing job. I did, like YouTube documentaries where I would go interview scientists and thought I was doing a good job. And then the comments would be like making fun of my vocal fry or like what I was wearing or something like that. And it's a million times worse for women, for people of color, but like it's not fun. And it is happening to me from time to time. And eventually I felt like I developed some sort of like skin to just be like, whatever. And when people didn't like articles that we did at Vice, it was very easy for me to like roll my eyes and just be like, well, whatever, like you're getting it for free. Like, who cares? Don't read it. And now, I mean, I still want to have that impulse. And I think, but at the same time, it's like when we get feedback from subscribers where they're like, we didn't like that article or I didn't like that article. It's like, well, they're like directly financially supporting that work. And it does cut like a little bit deeper. I think we've had the good fortune of people being like extraordinarily nice to us. And we're like really thankful. Like I'll perform that gratitude now. It's just like, when I'm mailing those t-shirts or like when I'm reading comments or whatever, like I've mailed t-shirts to Japan, to Australia, to North Dakota, to Montana. And I'm like, how did you find us? Why do you want my t-shirt? Like it's so like, there's a moment where I'm like, wow, this is really cool. But it's so much different than it was at Vice, where they weren't like giving, like the readers weren't like giving me anything. They were like giving us attention, but then all of the like monetary reward and like all of that was sort of going back to Vice and then ultimately like private equity people and like all of that. Whereas now it's like this person is like literally giving me money and my colleagues money. And I think that it does change things a little bit. We've also had parties, like we had a party in LA, we had a party in New York, and a bunch of people came to them. And that was such an amazing moment to see like these people exist in real life. It's so cool that they came to this journalism talk or like this party that we had. And then there'd be a few people would be like, oh, I feel like I know you because I heard your podcast, or I know your voice from the podcast. And like so many creators and journalists and podcasters and YouTubers like have that experience, but that was a new experience for me. And I think it was a little bit like, I was literally talking to my therapist about this like 2 days ago, being like, there's like the public persona that I put off and there's like my internal life. And it's when it's your business and when I feel like I'm thinking about the business like all the time, it like where that stops and where I start is like a really hard thing to sort of like figure out, I think.
This episode is brought to you by Factor.
Cold days, big goals, absolutely zero interest in cooking?
Factor makes healthy eating easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs.
No planning, no grocery math, no what did I buy this ingredient for?
I love that Factor has quality, functional ingredients, including lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole food ingredients, and healthy fats.
And there's so much variety. Over 100 rotating meals every week, including the new Muscle Pro meals, if you're doing strength stuff.
And they support your diet, whether it's high protein meals, Mediterranean, whole ingredients, healthy fats, or more. Plus, there are no refined sugars or artificial sweeteners.
I've looked for something like this for a long time, and Factor really is the best.
It's good food that tastes great and is ready in about 2 minutes, always fresh, never frozen, no prep, and no stress.
Head to factormeals.com/pastdue50off. That's 50 off.
And use code PASSDUE50OFF to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year.
Eat like a pro this month with Factor. New subscribers only, varies by plan, 1 free breakfast item per box for 1 year while subscription is active. Want more from our conversation with Jason Koebler?
In the bonus edition, he shares the small decision that made all the difference and how it turned 404 Media into a sustainable business almost overnight.
Plus, we dig deeper into the emotional and ethical weight of running a creator-led company at a time when nothing feels stable.
Hear the full bonus edition at patreon.com/pastdue. And while you're there, you'll get a bunch of other bonus content, join a community of like-minded creators, and help support the podcast.
We're talking about being independent and the difference that I mean, there's a different cost in a lot of ways, but the time that y'all have chosen to do this and the environment that we're currently in, where corporations being intertwined with the government and being very, very intentional about trying to control media and control narrative. What does it feel like to start something independent, and not only independent, but independent with the expressed intention to, go against corporate interests in this current environment? Like, what does that felt like? Has it felt uniquely stressful?
Well, at first we were very curious whether any like companies would respond to our emails, for example, because like I don't know, like I had a long not relationship, but just like emailing PR people at companies and at Vice, and them getting mad and yelling at me and like all that sort of thing. And I've never really been one to sort of like, none of us have kind of like played the access game. Like we've always, all of our work has sort of been like, what are the powerful interests in technology in the world, and like how are they affecting real human beings? And like a lot of our reporting and scoops has come from the people who are impacted by that technology, like whether it's Meta, whether it's like a surveillance company like Flock, whether it is like a change to the Google algorithm or something like that, or it's come from like workers inside companies, and usually lower level workers. Like we did a ton of articles about like Amazon delivery drivers and that sort of thing. And so we were never like reliant on companies to give us like preferred access to like their new software or whatever. And so in many ways it like felt at first like we were just continuing that work. And this was 2 years ago when we started it. But like sort of as all of big tech has cozied up with the Trump administration, as Elon Musk launched Doge, like as all of these things like started to happen, it felt like we were in like the right place at the right time to tell these stories. And two, I got like friends and family being like, yo, like Mark Zuckerberg's going to have you killed. And it's like, I'm like, okay. And so, I mean, it's hard, but at the same time, I think paradoxically, it's a little bit easier for us to tell these stories. One, because we've always been doing it, or we've been doing it for a while. But two, when you look at the administration in particular, it feels like so much of what animates like the Trump administration is like grievance. And so it's like, we're going to bring you the head of a CNN journalist, or we're going to sue Paramount, or we're going to like do all this stuff. And it's like, I feel as though a lot of their followers, they know CNN, they know the failing New York Times, they know the fake news media, they know all of this stuff. Like, that's become a meme over time. And I don't know that it's like advantageous to the administration to be like, we're going after 404 media.
Right,
and so
okay.
it's like allowed us to actually tell impactful stories, but like slightly fly under the radar, because I don't know if there is like a good narrative for the powers that be to like come after us. It's like, I'm a dude in a garage, and I would knock on like so much wood when I say that, because like I don't want to become a target. That's very scary, but I do think that it has allowed us to be a little bit more like forceful, and like we don't really pull punches. We don't feel like we need to pull punches.
Yeah, we are so interested in kind of what it takes to build the thing, but I want to make a connection between the thing you've built and the kind of reporting you're able to do, right? To report on Doge, to fly under the radar with this stuff. I think some of what you're reporting is especially relevant to creators, right? Like people who are basically in the same industry, journalists and whatnot. Like, do you feel like there's alarm bells that should be ringing for more people who might be like listeners to this show, people who are in the economy that's under threat, well, our entire economy is under threat. Sorry, back that up. But the kind of people who are interested in pursuing journalism, creative work like Mike, gig economy workers, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we try to tell that story, and like thankfully we've been able to write about how some things have, like how the proliferation of AI has affected our business, how like the fracturing of social media has affected our business, and like I talk a lot about this idea of discoverability on the internet. Like y'all know it, but like 5-6 years ago, 10 years ago, you could do an article, publish a video, whatever, post it on Facebook, and like tons of people would read it. And then you could do that with Twitter. And it's like, now you have to be on many, many different platforms, and you have to show up there like authentically. And that takes like so much time, so much effort, different strategies on different ones, and it just feels like it's like kind of like an all-encompassing, all-consuming thing. It's like not enough now just to make the video or to just do the article. You have to like think about how you're going to distribute that. And then at the same time, you have this proliferation of AI and AI slop, and it's like you might have spent hours preparing for recording, editing this podcast and pushing it out. And then you're competing against like zillions of AI generated podcasts that are like vying for that same trying to win that same algorithmic lottery. And I think we're seeing like in real time, the like collapse of this idea of just sort of like, if you do good work, people will find it. It's like not that easy anymore. And I feel very thankful that I had 15 years of experience, or like 12 years of experience before we did this, because it's not like I had a huge following, or Joseph Cox or Emmanuel Myberg or Sam Cole or my colleagues had huge followings, but we had some following and we had some people who knew who we were. And we were able to start something, and people were able to find it like relatively easy. And I worry a lot about people who are breaking into journalism right now, or who are trying to become a YouTuber right now, or a podcaster, a musician, or whatever, because building that like initial audience is starting to feel like really impossible. And like that pressure is coming for us and for you and for all of us. But I think it's like people who are pretty well established can withstand some of that pressure, possibly. Whereas someone like, we're never going to know the voices that we're not going to hear from, because they can't get into it in the first place, I guess.
And I think I am concerned too. I hope there's something to there's answers coming. I do think cooperative ventures are a way of lifting some of those people, right? We're losing the ability of a single editor at a big publication to say that person is really talented. Right? Like it's almost like we might miss some gatekeeping because some people got through those gates, and it wasn't always fair that individual people took pleasure in saying, I want to discover somebody. I want to read an obscure zine or a poetry magazine, or go see a band that I've never heard of before, because I want to be the person that lifts that person up. Right. And I feel like that's something we're losing in a way. Like, again, I don't want to be nostalgic for gatekeeping, but I also think the people that now have the power to lift up voices, I worry about that long tail getting further and further away, right? Like the graph gets higher and higher for the people at the high end, longer and longer for the people at the low end, and there's less and less cultural pressure for the people who are up at the top to decide, you know what, like, I think I'm going to discover someone,
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you entirely. And I think about that a lot because, I mean, paradoxically, like I got into the industry at a good time, like 2009, 2010, like after that crisis, because magazines were failing then. And so my first job was at US News and World Report, which was a competitor at the time in Newsweek and still sort of exists. But basically, they fired everyone who worked on the magazine, which was like 30, 40-year veterans who were covering Congress and the White House and all that. And they hired a bunch of interns who were 20 years old, and they were like, go cover Congress now. Like, here's a press pass from US News and World Report. And it's like, the congressional representatives didn't know that I was an idiot who had no idea what I was doing. Like, they let me into their meetings anyways. They answered my phone calls anyways. And I got a lot of experience doing that, even though I was making like $30,000 a year to live in like a very expensive city, and developed a lot of credit card debt and all of that. But it's like, that was an opportunity for me at that time. And then sort of like rode that into the rise of digital media and all of these companies where it's like there were tons and tons of jobs. A lot of them were, disappearing all the time, but it felt like there was always like a new publication funded by some rich person that was going to hire like 50 people, and maybe it would last 18 months and they would burn all the money, but like there were things to apply for and there were ways to like get in the door or whatever. And it feels like a lot of that has disappeared, like just totally dried up. So that pipeline of like, how do you get started has gotten harder. And then at the same time, it's like at 404 Media, we have successfully created 4 journalism jobs. And it's like, I'm very, very thankful for that. But like, Vice employed 1,000 people or like more than that. And I think that there is a lot of room for publications like ours. But I think a lot about like, do we have the responsibility to try to grow 404 Media, to hire more people? Like, I mean, we talk a lot about like, what do we want this thing to be in the coming years and all of that. And there's a huge part of me that it's like, I actually just like really like writing articles. And like, that's something that I didn't get to do for a long time. I was moved into editing and management and all that. And now I'm back to sort of basics. I'm like, I'm blogging again, I'm writing again. It's working. I'm financially stable. Like it's working. But then I'm like, but we were good at bringing in new talent at Vice and like hiring them. And so like, if that becomes a financial reality, like, do we have a responsibility to do it? And I think kind of go back and forth on that, because it's like, no, it's not our job to like rebuild journalism for the entire like world or like that for the entire industry and country that's been lost all of these jobs. But at the same time, it's like, well, we could like show how it could possibly be done if like we could try it and maybe other people will follow and that sort of thing. So I know that was a very long rambly answer, but that's like, I think about that a lot. It's like, as we become like more stable, do we have a responsibility to sort of like bring others along if we can, even though it definitely complicate our lives. It's like, we've talked to lawyers about like, how does one like grow a business? Because when we started this, we started it like as simply as possible. So it's like, what is the structure of the company? Like, what does an employment contract look like? What does equity look like? How do they become like a voting member of whatever we build? Like, all of that are things that can be figured out, but that are like very time consuming, very expensive to figure out. And then you're sort of like managing a person or building, or you're responsible for that person's livelihood. And like, that's not something that I take lightly. And so, it's something I think that we want to do at some point, but I agree with you entirely. It's like, if someone has a like super popular Substack and they're making millions of dollars a year to like blog their thoughts a few times a week, like, good for them, I guess. But also, should they then have to kind of like bring others along? And I think maybe the answer should be like, maybe yes.
I think about that a lot. We think about that for this show. And we were talking about a little bit about the article I wrote for Talking Points Memo, kind of reflecting on the future of patron supported media. And one of the arguments I make, perhaps not as built out as I wanted it to be, is the future of patrons, the future of media. If we're being crushed by capitalism, we need to think how to be anti-capitalist in our own structures, right? Like, to be nonprofits, to be cooperatively owned, right? To be worker owned. And I think that ideally, and this is ideals, right? I mean, another thing that we've talked about on this show is that sometimes ethical choices are expensive, right? there are times like everyone who uses Substack, like I've tried to get off of it, but it's actually it's going to wind up costing me money, which is a story for another time. But it was expensive to decide to do that. For the show, we've talked about our goals. And one of them is when we get big enough, it would be nice to hire some people, right? Even though we are only 3 people right now and like we're making it, right? I mean, we do have an ad set. We do have people doing our ad sales. But then the question becomes, okay, when are we quote big enough? Like when do we feel like we're going to have enough money for ourselves to compensate us that we're willing to build that pie out, right? So I think that your questions are good ones, but I also think we can't, as journalists, as creators, et cetera, like we can't necessarily expect to keep playing to play the way the system wants us to play if we want the system to change.
Yeah. I mean, we also think about like, how are we write all the time about how Instagram and Facebook are like, rotting our brains and like horrible incentive structures and all of that. And it's like, please follow us on Instagram though, like, because it's one of the few ways that we can kind of like get the word out. And so, I mean, I do think kind of a lot about like I think that we try to be transparent about why we do things the way that we're doing them and how we're trying to make money and like all that sort of thing. It's like when we first started, we were very upfront, like we're going to have ads on our website and the ads are going to be for people who are not paying subscribers. And we do write about how like the ad industry is like bad often. Like, invasive, has a lot of trackers, things like that. It's like we're going to try to do the least bad version of that is like available to us. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to do that is like journalism has been funded by advertising to some extent for like hundreds of years. And I honestly feel this way. I feel like it's almost like hubristic of us if we were like, we're going to do this, but like no ads. Like we're going to not keep the door open to that because like the number one thing that we want to do is like, we feel like our work is important. And if we can't pay ourselves, then we can't do the work and then it will not exist. And so maybe that's just like a little bit convenient explanation for us where it's like, we want to run this as like a profitable business, whether like, it would be nice to be a nonprofit someday or something like that. But like theoretically, it's like we don't want to burn money. We don't want to like live in like we want to be able to pay rent and like that sort of thing. And we want to like model like a successful business for others because there's been like so many publications that are like a billionaire is going to fund us and there's no business model whatsoever. And like when they lose interest, it's gone. And I think that that's a net negative for like the world. And so there are like ethical choices where it's like, yeah, like I would love to like model anti-capitalism in a better way, but that almost feels like a too big of a thing for us to take on. And I'm not saying you're saying we should.
Yeah,
but
I'm
like,
so not saying that. And I'm so trying to say, like, I think we all just have to make choices. Like, and I think that choices are expensive, right? And you do what you're literally able to afford to do, right? And everyone gets to decide like what that means for them. And my hope is that people try. I mean, that's all I guess I can say is that the fact that you're thinking about it says to me that the capacity to make that choice is there, right? Like thoughtful decisions are all anyone can ask of each other. And
I think there's a lot of different models, like as in like, I think that no one model is going to win out. And we're like sort of seeing a bunch of different ones work and or not work.
When I've talked about on social media, not just on social media, when I wrote that TPM article and talked about how precarious it is to try to be a working journalist these days, I get a fair number of responses that's it's like, well, you should get a second job. Like, which I personally, right? Like, that's not how you, I mean, I admire the people who have been able to write a novel while also working full time, right? Like, that's fantastic. I don't think that's probably something you can do as a journalist. Like, you need to be able to spend that time doing something. You know, you need to be able to do the reporting, have the hashing it out, whatever. I don't need to explain this to you. I also think artists do better in general, Mike, like when you can focus on creating your art and have also downtime, because that's when a lot of like neuroscience tells us you need that downtime in order to have the ideas come to surface. So I want to argue with those people, but I've always been really heartened by the same kind of thing that you're talking about. When people come up, they realize they're like, oh no, like I don't want a journalist who also has a full-time job, right? I don't want people whose work I love to have to do other stuff. We need a place for people to do the slow work, to do the work that takes multiple days or weeks to create. And that's something I do like about what you're doing is you've had like really intensely reported pieces that take some time. And I wonder if you could, for people who don't understand, if you could like walk through the process of one of those more intensely reported pieces, like how long does it take?
Yeah, I mean, well, number one, I think to make it on the internet, you have to post. Like you have to be like out there and present like often. And so sort of have always had this internal like I guess drive or intuition or just like working in this industry long enough to be like, usually we log on and we see what's happening in the world and we're like, is there a fast article that we can do? Yeah. Which doesn't mean bad article, but it's like, can we like find something that's happening in the news today, make a few phone calls and publish something? And we sort of all do that because there are places where it's like, I'm only going to work on this magnificent 3,000 word investigation that's going to take months. And I'm not going to like do anything in the meantime. And and by do anything, I mean, like, I'm not going to publish anything in the meantime. Of course, they're working on it. They're doing stuff. But I think that that's been really important for us because people will forget about you on the internet like very quickly if you're not publishing often. Weirdly, like we try to signal to people the things that we care about. And so we've been reporting a lot on this company called Flock, which is a surveillance company that tracks license plates. And like, there's been a couple investigations into them by secretaries of state and like Congress and things like that. And we'll do like a short article being like, oh, they're getting investigated right now. And then in that article, we'll be like, do you know more about this company? Or like, is this happening? Like, please reach out to us. And sort of by doing these like iterative, smaller stories, we're able to kind of build the sourcing that is needed to do a bigger investigation that can take weeks or months. And like most of that gets done in the afternoons where it's like, oh, I've already published an article today. I feel like I've taken that personal pressure off of myself and I'm going to like dive deeper into filing Freedom of Information Act requests or like doing an interview with a sensitive source or something like that. And like, a lot of it is kind of just like inching the ball forward, not in our free time, but sort of like slowly over time, or like that's how I at least prefer to work. But there are many, many stories that have taken us months to do, but they're largely done in like 2 to 3 hour increments every day over the course of those months. And in the meantime, we will be publishing shorter stories about that topic, which paradoxically makes it easier to do that longer thing. It's like, for whatever reason, it's like the cobwebs kind of work themselves out if you're just kind of publishing shorter things that then maybe you get a piece of feedback from a reader that some argument you were making or some thread that you were pulling is like not actually that interesting. And so you like pivot the story in some way. And I think that's been really key for us, is just sort of like picking a few lanes, focusing on those types of stories about how like AI slop and AI art is like really impacting labor, is impacting musicians, is impacting writers. And using the shorter, easier stories to like build an argument or build a, an investigation or sourcing that can turn into like one of those bigger investigations.
I want to be clear that I love that. And I also think there are total parallels to more personal essay writing. And also I bet there's parallels to music, which is like, you do write. I just want to say, like, someone once recommended I get a job at Warby Parker. So
the like second job situation, it's like, I totally understand. Well, I actually don't understand. I think it's a really mean thing to say to an artist or a journalist or a musician, to just be like, oh, if you can't make ends meet, like, go get a second job. Like, that sort of is fundamentally saying, like, I don't think that what you're doing is like a job. It's like a fundamental, like, is worth it. And we've actually made that argument to some people where they're like, why do you have a paywall? Like, which we don't have a paywall on every article, but we have a paywall on some articles. And sometimes people like yell at us about it. And we're like, I don't walk into your place of business and be like, give me that ice cream for free. It's like, we've sort of had to be like, this is worth paying for. And, not everything is worth paying for, but it's like, if you don't want to pay for it, like, I guess too bad, which I don't know. I hate saying, as someone who's all of my work's been free for so long, but that was like a big mental shift for us, was like, we have to value ourselves as being worth paying for. Otherwise, like, no one is going to do it. I do worry about like what that means for the information ecosystem on the internet and that sort of thing. And just like, we think our articles are important, but then there's like a barrier to entry to actually read them. That's a hard thing for us. And I think you sort of make that point in your Talking Points memo article, and others do in that series, where it's like, if all of our best journalists are paywalling their work like independently, then it just means that people who can afford it are going to be getting that information. And then like a lot of the like straight up like fake AI stuff is not paywalled. Like, that's how you sort of end up with this. And it's like, I kind of agree with that. I feel like that's like now we got like a stable footing. Now, hopefully we can like figure out how to make our work like more accessible to others.
Well, we could dig in on all of this stuff for hours, but we're going to get ready to wrap this up. But one of the most important things that we do here on this show, given that we are a show expressly about what it's like for creators in this economy, is it's very important for us to turn the show over to our guest to do plugs. And we have a...
I think I know what he's going to plug.
In a way, this whole thing has been a plug, but just for there's this one concentrated effort. Let people know how they can best support you and your endeavors.
Yeah, we're 404 Media. We are a journalist-owned tech reporting publication. We're at 404media.co. We have a podcast called the 404 Media Podcast. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. We're all over the place. And then there's also just like a bunch of websites like us that are also journalist-owned that you should check out. Like Defector, Hellgate, Remap, Aftermath, many others. So I think try to support that sort of thing. I think it's really important. And we've been overwhelmed with the support. We really appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you indeed.
I admire what you're doing, and I fully support you and value all of it. So, yeah, thank you. Why is it still funny to me?
I don't know.
Why is it still funny to me?
This is a long running bit now. It's long running.
It is, but I understand you have a new project.
Oh my goodness. In internet terms, it is 97,000 years old now. But I do have a new album out called Neighborhood Gods Unlimited. I'm happy to say I'm done with all the touring for it. Finally.
All of it?
The touring associated with the album, yes. That is finished. That is done. All of that branded set of dates.
More
is over.
touring is going to happen.
In January.
But-
I'm going to be in Canada in January if anybody's interested in that.
What do you mean the touring is over? Is it no
'cause
longer supporting the album?
It is no longer supporting the album with its branding. This set of shows is just some whole other set of things. I'm gonna be in Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Saskatoon.
In Winnipeg in January?
Yeah, like a real crazy person, like a real life crazy person. I'm gonna be in those 3 places at the coldest time possible.
My God. You know, you and I are not the same size, or else I would send you my like, I have one of the Canada Goose parkas that I haven't been able to give up since I lived in Minnesota. And you're going to need it. You're going to need
I have so many coats.
Okay.
Part of me is, it will always be a Chicagoan. So I'll always have coats, whether I use them or not. I got coats.
Well, Mike, I also feel like I need to point out to people that you just got, you got the gun bump.
I got a gun bump. Okay, we'll see if it's a bump. I did get a James Gunn cosign along with a bunch of other kind of niche independent rappers he's listening to for some reason. It's a really odd thing to be involved with.
Earl Sweatshirt, not niche.
Earl Sweatshirt and Aesop Rock are the largest of the bunch.
Yeah.
But it is quite the collection of people, and he's publicly letting people know this is the stuff he's into, and that's cool to me. You know,
you're gonna show up with Rhett. You're gonna show up with Rhett on a DC Universe soundtrack.
I would
That's
love
what
to.
I think.
I would love to. Yeah. I'll show up anyway, whether they invite me or not. I'll just remember me. Remember, I was in the tweet. Anna, enough about me and my weird life. What you got going on?
It is November, so I'm doing a National Novel Writing Month morning writing session that you can join anytime. It's just like 7 to 8 Central, so I guess 8 to 9 Eastern, just a creative writing practice placeholder for people. And I will be doing my workshop on creating a sustainable writing practice more intentionally coming up here. And, you know, New Republic column, Space the Nation podcast.
How do people sign up for your workshops? How do people sign up for them?
Oh, they go to my website, Mike. Okay, they go to AnnaMarieCox.com, and
wonderful.
It's right there, just right there. Also right there is a really good picture of me from 5 years ago when I had like professional headshots taken. Mike, when do you redo headshots?
I have to get new photos taken every time I put something out. It's so annoying.
Oh.
It is so annoying. That's a whole nother conversation we can have.
You know, we should do like a bits and bobs of just like the actual like necessary branding expenses that go along with being a creator. That's what this show's about. Right. All right. And so people can tune in next time where we'll talk about something else, but we talk about how to make it work.
That's right.
So we're making it work.
We'll make it work again next week. Stop doom scrolling. Start decoding the tech, rewiring your week and your world. The Interface is the BBC's fiercely informed, fast, and funny take on how technology is changing everything.
Hosted by journalists Tom Germain, Karen Howe, and Nikki Wolf, each episode unpacks week by week the unfolding story of how technology is shaping all our futures. No guests, no jargon, just 3 sharp voices debating the tech news stories that matter. Whether they shook a government, broke the internet, or quietly tipped the balance of power.
As TikTok shifts geopolitics, Trump drives digital shockwaves, Elon Musk expands his space internet empire, and AI reroutes the routines of everyday life. The trio asks, what world are the tech titans building for us? And do we want to live in it?
Find The Interface from the BBC wherever you get your podcasts.
Sometimes it feels like red and blue states are just as divergent as post-World War II East and West Germany. So what can the US learn from German political history in order to create a more perfect union? Find out on the new season of The Future of Our Former Democracy, the Signal Award-winning podcast for a more equitable democracy and large media. Hosted by me, Colin Cole, and Heather Villanueva. It's time to rethink democracy. So follow The Future of Our Former Democracy wherever you get your podcasts.